II, the Nazis were building a camp across Europe. The Janowska Road camp was a camp where the Jews were staying while they were building this road. Now, nobody was quite sure whether the idea of building this road was to kill the Jews or to build the road, but certainly the former was proceeding at a much faster pace than the latter. One night the Allies came over and they bombed the road to smithereens. There was nothing left of the road. The Nazis were absolutely furious. And they got all the Jews on that freezing winter night there in Poland into the middle. They put them out there in the middle of the field where all these huge bomb craters were. And they lined them up at the mouth of the largest bomb crater. And the commandant said, Jews, we're going to have a little fun with you tonight. Each of you is going to jump across this crater. If you make it to the other side, you can go back to your room. But if you don't make it to the other side and you fall into the crater, you will be machine gunned to death. Now let's start. One by one, each of these poor, emaciated, starving Jews made his attempt at life to jump across this abyss. Many of them fell and met their maker that night in Poland, at the bottom of that crater. Some made it across. In that line of destiny there stood a lion of faith, the Bluzhever Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. The Bluzhever Rebbe had lost his entire family in the war, 11 children and his wife. But he never lost his faith. Behind him in this line was standing a young fellow from Warsaw who'd lost his faith. He turned his back on God. He didn't want to know anything about anything. And this young fellow from Warsaw turned to the Bluzhever Rebbe and he said, I'm not going to perform like a circus animal for these dogs. I'm not going to jump. When it's my time, I'm going to stand there, and if they want to shoot me, let them shoot me. I'm not jumping through hoops. The Bluzhever Rebbe turned to him and said, my son, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, has given us a very precious gift, the gift of life. But he's given us that gift with a condition, that we are not allowed to give it back to him 1 second before he takes it from us. He finished speaking, and as he finished speaking, it was now the Bluzhever Rebbe's turn to jump. And with a tremendous effort, he pulled back a little bit, and he leapt right up into the air, and he stretched out his arms, and he landed on the other side. It was a miracle. 2 seconds later, this young fellow from Warsaw landed next to him. And they looked at each other for a good few long moments. The young fellow said to him, how did you do that? You're old, you're emaciated. How did you leap across the crater? So the Bluzhever Rebbe said, as I leapt off from the side of the crater, I suddenly saw in front of me a vision of my Zayda, of my grandfather, and in front of him his grandfather, and in front of him his grandfather, and all of the Zaydas, all of the grandfathers stretching back to Har Sinai, to Sinai. And I reached out and I grabbed onto my Zayda's coattails and he pulled me across. That's how I got across. But how did you get across? He said, Rebbe, I was holding onto your coattails. We talk about Emunah Misinai, faith that comes from Sinai. Where does this incredibly strong faith of the Jewish people come from? Where is it that in all generations, not just during the war, but in crusade, in the Inquisition, Jews have been prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, saying Shema Yisrael on their lips? Where does that come from? Where does that strength of faith come from? We're not a nation that glorifies martyrdom. We're not a nation that sends our children off to school in the morning with their lunch pack and an explosive belt around their waist. Where does it come from? The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos starts by saying, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. The Maharal points out that that's a rather strange thing to say. Moshe kibel Torah. Moshe received the Torah from a mountain. Moshe received the Torah from God. Why does it say Moshe kibel Torah miSinai? And he explains that what took place at Sinai, at Mount Sinai, was not just the receiving by the Jewish people of the Torah. What took place there was an experience that the entire Jewish people underwent that changed their perception of reality. A new perception of who I am. Who am I? Who am I? The Zohar HaKodesh tells us that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is stakel be'oraisa u'bara alma. Hashem looked into the Torah and He created the world. Meaning, everything in this physical world has to have a spiritual source in the Torah, otherwise it can't exist. When God created man, man was given life from the posuk, from the verse that says, Naaseh Adam, let us make man. That posuk, that verse, powered man, powered the ability for man to exist until the moment the Jewish people stood at Sinai. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke, and He said, Anochi, I am Hashem your God, Anochi. Their souls, the Gemara in Shabbos teaches us, left their bodies. And their souls had to be brought back to life. They died at Sinai. But when their souls were brought back to life, what powered their souls was no longer Naaseh Adam, it was Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem your God. The Gemara in Shabbos teaches us that Anochi, the letters Aleph, Nun, Chaf, Yud, is a notricon, is a mnemonic. It stands for Ana, I, Nafshi, myself. Kesavis have written Yahavis and given over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Sinai changed the Jewish people's perception of who they are. Who I am. Who am I? At Sinai we received a totally new perception of reality. Who I am. The Gemara in Sukkah says that when Hillel was rejoicing at the Simchas Beis HaShveva, he would say, Im ani kan hakol kan. If I'm here, everybody is here. Sounds rather conceited. If I'm here, everybody's here. It sounds that way until you understand that Ani, Anochi, Anna is one of Hashem's names. What happened at Sinai was implanted in the Jewish people, was a certainty, was a knowledge, the root of Emunah from Sinai, that my perception of my own existence is identical with the belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're the same. Twice a day a Jew says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and as I said before, that's the phrase. The Jews have left the world, Al Kiddush Hashem. In the deeper writings it says that a person is allowed to think for a split second when he says Echad, Ein od milvado. There's nothing else exists. What does that mean? Nothing. When we say Hashem is one, we don't just mean there's one God, we mean there's nothing else. Hu echad ve'ein sheini. A Jew could, at that moment, understand that my entire existence, I give up. I give up to Hashem. That's where Emunah comes from. It's not an intellectual thing. In the deepest sources of my soul, my neshama, I understand that I am no more than one expression of Hashem in His world. And this expression finds its way to many different results, many different examples. I'll finish with one example, a family who lives very close here to Ohr Somayach. And traditionally they have many students and people on Shabbos from all walks of life. The weird and the wonderful, nobody's turned away. It happened there was a student who came from the Hebrew University. And this was his first Shabbos. And he was really giving the host a tough time. Every time the host wanted to say a Devar Torah, a word of Torah, he stopped him and he interrupted. He said, this is xenophobia, this is fundamentalism, every ism under the sun. On the way out, the young son of about 9 years old noticed that this fellow had a ring in his nose. And so he looked up to him very innocently and said, what have you got that thing in your nose for? And so this fellow looked down at this 9-year-old boy, said, well, what have you got that thing on your head for? And this young fellow, this young boy of 9 years old said, because I have to know at all times and places that there's something bigger and greater above me. Now, why have you got that thing in your nose? Couldn't answer him. He went back to the dormitory over here and he sat down, he wrote in his diary and he said, I have no idea why I have this thing in my nose. This little boy knows exactly why. He's a keeper on his head. Emunah Sinai. What took place at Sinai was not just the receiving a book of laws, not just the giving of the Torah. It was a total new understanding of what it means to be I, where I, the deepest sense of my own existence, melds and becomes identical with the belief in God.
according to the Ramban, a Torah obligation to say Birkas HaTorah, to say the brachas of learning Torah. There is a very unique feature. Ordinarily, when we do a bracha on a mitzvah, it is one bracha. Tefillin, we have one for the Rosh, one for the Yad, one for the Rosh. Lulav is one, Shofar is one. With the brachas of Torah, there are 3 brachas that we make for Torah. Why 3? We also know that all the nations of the world have 7 Noahide obligations. Clearly, they need to know what to do also. So what is unique about our Torah learning? Is there something unique about our Torah learning? Or is it just a guidebook? They have their rules, set of rules. We have our set of rules. Also, we say in a bracha, Asher bocha banu mikol ha'olamim, Kodesh Baruch Hu, who chose us from all the nations and who gave to us the Torah. Chazal tell us that Kodesh Baruch Hu offered the Torah to all the nations of the world, and each one for his own individual reason turned it down. So where is the choosing us? If everybody else chooses it down, we seem to be maybe the default. The Nesivos HaMishpat, in his Hakdama to Chumash, asks these questions, and he gives 3 fundamental, unique features to our Torah learning. Number 1, we learn Torah not only as a guide to know what to do, but in fact there is an intrinsic mitzvah of learning. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta demonstrates this from a few places. Number 1, tells us the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that a ben seir umoire, that is a very rebellious kid of very questionable behavior, lo hoyo v'le osid lihiyos. There never was such a case and never is destined to be such a case. So ask the Gemara, lama kosvei, why did the Torah indeed bring down ben seir umoire? Drush v'kabel schar. You should learn it and get reward for learning it. Ask Rabbi Yisrael a very obvious question. Our library is vast. Why the need to put in something totally hypothetical that we should have what to learn and get reward for learning when we are not lacking for what to learn? Explains Rabbi Yisrael, were we to only have that which is of a practical nature, even today, Kodshim and Taurus, we live with the belief that there will be a Mashiach, there will be a Binyan Beis HaMikdash, and there will be a Halacha L'Maisa once again. But were we to only to have that, we would think that the Torah is only a guide to know what to do. The Torah therefore writes Ben Seir Umoire, which is totally hypothetical, that we should know that there's an intrinsic value to learning of Torah even if it cannot be implemented. It's a mitzvah unto itself. The Gemara in the Dorim asks, Alma of the Haaretz, why was there destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? This was asked to the Nevi'im, to the sages, and none of them could give the answer until HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself came and explained. Says the Gemara, Shelo birchu b'Torah tchila. They didn't make brachis on Torah learning first. Says Rabbi Yisrael, how do we have a situation that something like making a bracha on Torah stopped? Why would a generation want to stop making a bracha? And the Mefoshim emphasized that the learning was carrying on with the same intensity, with the same amount of time, with the same quantity. So why before did you make a bracha and now you stopped? Explains Rabbi Yisrael, we have the opinion of the Yerushalayim that we make a bracha even when we build a sukkah, for the building of a sukkah. According to the opinion of Yerushalayim, even the preparing the object to do a mitzvah requires a bracha. So they thought that the reason why we are making a bracha on Torah is the same way we make a bracha on building a sukkah. However, the halacha is, we don't make a halacha on building a sukkah. Our opinion, which is the halacha, is that you only make a bracha on the actual mitzvah, not the hechsher, not the preparing for the mitzvah. So that's why they stopped making a bracha, because they mistakenly thought that learning was merely a vehicle to be able to perform. They didn't see that learning had its own intrinsic value. So therefore they stopped making the bracha. Again, the same theme, that our chiyuv to learn is not only that we should know what to do, but we learn in order that we have our own intrinsic mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So that is difference number one between our Talmud Torah and the rule book that the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach have to follow. Difference number two. Nesivos HaMishpat uses a lashon that by us there is what's called the Levush HaPnimi and the Levush HaChitzoni. There is, as it were, the inner parts of Torah and the outer parts of Torah. The inner garment, the outer garment. The word we use when we're talking about the revealed parts of Torah is pshat. It's brought down in the Sifrei Kabbalah because that which is on the outside you are poshet. It's something which you can take off. Hence the word pshat, it is the outer. In our Torah, not only is there revealed straight pshuta shel mikra, literal reading of the verse, but there is pshat, remez, drash, sod. Chazal tell us in the Medrash in Tehillim there are 49 panim l'tuma and 49 panim l'tahara. The Ramban uses a lashon that there are shinim panim l'tera. The Reb Tzadok brings that Reb Shimon ben Yochai was doiresh shivim pshatim, 70 different understandings on the word Bereshis, which is klal Torah, because there are shivim panim l'Torah. Reb Moshe Chaim Lutzato in the Derech Etz Chaim brings down, not only is there pshat remez drash sod, 49, 70, there are shishim riboy panim l'Torah. There's 600,000 ways to look at everything. The Gra in Shir HaShirim, Perek Hey, Pasuk Yud, brings down that there are 600,000 panim to each shivim panim l'Torah. Rabbi Yerucham explains, because when we were at Ma'amad Har Sinai, the 600,000 original neshamas of Klal Yisrael, each person was given his own individual Kabbalah. If there were 600,000 neshamas with 670 shivim panim l'Torah, that's 600,000 times 70. So there's tremendous breadth, scope, depth in every word of Torah. The Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, it's the literal pshat only. So we have the intrinsic mitzvah to learn, and we also have the depth and scope of the learning that we have. There's a third element. Gemara tells us in Brachos, Lo kemidas HaKadosh Baruch Hu midas basar v'dam. The way, the attribute of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like the attributes of flesh and blood. Basar v'dam, a normal person, when he gives a gift, when he sells something which is dear to him, the seller is sad that he's had to part with his object. The buyer is delighted. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he gave the Torah, he's delighted that we got it. If I teach you something, I still have it. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu shared the Torah with us, he's got it, I've got it. Where's the parable? Where's the metaphor? How is it he's given us something which he no longer has? It's still his, it's still ours. The Nesivos HaMishpat answers with another Gemara. There's a famous Gemara in Bava Metzia. Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim were having an argument. Rabbi Eliezer brought proofs, Chachamim brought proofs, and they were getting nowhere. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Im halacha kamoisi, if the rule is like me, chorov yochiach, let the carob tree prove my point. According to the Gemara, the carob tree uprooted itself 100 amma. Second opinion, 400 amma. Chachamim responded, carob trees don't prove anything. Said Rabbi Eliezer, Amasamayim yochiach, let the stream prove my point. Gemara tells us the stream switched directions. Chachamim said, no, you can't bring a proof from a stream. Ooh, says Rabbi Eliezer, Koisle Beis HaMedrash yochiach, let the walls of the Beis HaMedrash prove my point. So the walls started caving in. Chachamim yelled out at the walls and said, Im Talmidei Chachamim, menatzchin zeh zeh b'halachiv. Talmidei Chachamim are busy arguing and debating a halachic point. What are you butting in? What are you getting involved? So tell us Chazal, the walls didn't cave in out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer, out of respect for Chachamim. They didn't straighten up out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer. They remained hovering in the air. Rabbi Eliezer says, Min Shamayim yochichu. Let Shamayim prove my point. Out came a heavenly voice and said, the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. Stood up Rabbi Yeshua and said, Lo b'shamayimi. Lo b'shamayimi. The Torah is no longer in Shamayim. Explains the Gemara. Once the Torah was given, the final say is with us. The Ritva in Eruvin, the Gemara tells us, Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chayim. These and these, when we have a machlokes, we have an argument in halacha, this opinion and this opinion both came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chachmei HaTzefasim, the Chachmei HaTzefasim asked, how so? Says the Ritva, and it's almost verbatim, a medrash in Tehillim Perek Yud Beis, that when the Torah was given over, each halacha was given with 49 ways l'tumah, 49 ways l'tahara. Says the Gemara, how do we get a bottom line? We were given over the Klalei Psak of Achari Roif. So being that we were given over the Klalei Psak, even though all opinions were given over, there is a bottom line which was given over to us. So we have a situation where not only were we taught the Torah, but the final say is with us. Says Rabbi Yaakov Milisa, this is the three brachas that we make on Torah. The first bracha is Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvosov la'asok b'divrei Torah, to toil, to learn. There is a mitzvah of being busy with Torah. There's an intrinsic mitzvah of learning. Unlike the Sheva b'mitznoach, they've got to learn in order to know. There's no intrinsic mitzvah. There is a halacha, there is a situation of tremendous depth and multifaceted approaches to every sugya. Hence, we need a tremendous siyata d'ishmaya to understand everything. That is the bracha of Hamelamed Torah la'am Yisrael. We are asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to constantly teach it to us, but because of its breadth and its depth, we need the constant siyata d'ishmaya, assistance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is Asher Bocha Bona Mikol Amim V'nosan Lonu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it over to us. Giving it over doesn't only mean teaching, it means giving us the final say in the halachic bottom line in every sugya. We can add that with the giving of the Torah was another facet. The Rav Avramsky Zichron Livracha contrasts by Yam Suf, by the crossing of the Red Sea, the sea only split when we went into the sea, when Nachshon ben Aminah walked in the Giu Mayim ad Nofesh, and the waters had reached by the throat. By the Yarden, when the Jewish people were crossing the Yarden at the time of the Yeshua, so the Torah, the Gemara tells us that the Kohanim held the Aron, but Kavan shenitbelu ragleim shel Kohanim b'mayim. As soon as the waters got wet from the Jordan, the waters stopped flowing. Says Rav Avramsky, Bo ura'ei kama koycha shel Torah. See how powerful the fact that we now have the Torah. They stood there with the Aron, and with the schus of Torah, it stopped right away. By the Yam Suf, we didn't have the Torah yet. There was one form of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's interaction with the Jewish people. With the giving of the Torah to us, there's a whole different relationship and interaction we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shlomo brings down from the Tolas Yaakov that on Shavuos, each individual is judged on his success in Torah for the year. Rav Wolbe on Rosh Hashanah, when he speaks about Rosh Hashanah, brings down a Rabbeinu Chananel that not only are we not judged for future Averis, but we also, if we have made a firm resolve to change, we're not judged for the past either. So we are presented on Rosh Hashanah, and this Shavuos is the Rosh Hashanah of our Torah for the year, with a new, fresh opportunity. Let us seize it, maximize it, and have a ksiva v'chsiva Torah in our Torah for the year.
So we're approaching the festival of Shavuos. And there's different ways of celebrating. The standard way that people often celebrate is they try to relive the narrative. You go back to what happened, and it's extremely dramatic. And if you think about it, it wasn't only like a once-off event in history. The imprint and the ramifications of what happened at Har Sinai over 3,000 years ago are still with us. The majority of the world's population are in deep belief of what occurred at Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. The Christians, the Muslims, also acknowledge that there was a climactic event, that there was a revelation of the creator of the world that spoke to the Jewish people. And that's part and parcel of not only who we are as the Jews today, but humanity as a whole. So this event is massive. So we want to relive it. And we understand that Shavuos is a revival of that energy. We want to access it. Standard way of accessing. Go back to what occurred and relive the narrative. As if we ourselves went through the process of preparation and the 3 days of waiting and anticipation. The mountain being bounded off, held off bounds to us to approach. It was becoming so imbued with holiness. And then we go on the climactic morning, and the mountain starts to shake, and the thunder rolls, and the lightning strikes, and the powerful sound of the shofar is heard. And we stand there trembling. Even though it happened 3,000 years ago, it's still with us. And the goal would be on Shavuos night to relive and re-experience that. And to, as it were, receive the Torah anew with that kind of mind frame, visualization. One way. And that's the way which I think is often people trying to do that. I would like to suggest that there's a danger in doing that. If you do that, it could be you'll miss out on the essence of what Shavuos is. I'd like to explain with some simple definitions. Let's begin in the beginning. Shavuot is called Kabbalat HaTorah, receiving the Torah. We receive the Torah. In order for us to understand what that means, we have to understand what is the definition of Torah and what is the definition of Kabbalah. What is Torah and what does accepting it mean? Without complex, convoluted descriptions, Torah means we created in this world, we are put here, what are we meant to do? The Creator says, this is what I want from you. The Torah reveals His will to us. In Hebrew, Gilui Ritzono. Hashem says, this is what I want from you. So what is the acceptance of Torah? The acceptance of Torah is what you want, we want. But where does it land? On what part of ourselves do we experience that acceptance? Simply speaking, could be in one of three realms. Hashem asks us to do things. Light Shabbos candles declaring the sanctity of the holy day. Make Kiddush. Put on tefillin. Those are actions. So we can receive the Torah in the world of action. Hashem says, I want you to do this. We do it. We can receive the Torah in the world of feelings. Hashem says, love your fellow man. Feel awe of your parents. When we feel those emotions and we act upon that emotional experience, we've accepted the Torah in the world of feelings. And Hashem says, this is the wisdom I'd like to teach you. And when we think about it, understand it, and comprehend it, we accept the Torah in the world, in the realm of thought. So there are three places that we could accept the Torah. In our actions, in our emotions, and in our thoughts. But I would suggest that even in those three areas, if we did it, there'd be something drastic, something large, something fundamental missing. And this is a secret that the Gemara, the Talmud, teaches us. It says, prior, in the build-up to the giving of the Torah, the Jews said something as a nation which was completely unexpected, to the degree that the Gemara states it was superhuman to even declare it. It was something which was beyond mortal comprehension. What were those words? 2 words, simple and straightforward. They said, Naseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. And we have to figure out what's so supernatural about saying those words. Well, let's think about how things normally pan out. In normal life, the decisions are made are based on the desire that I have that I've decided in terms of instructions being given to me. Someone asks me to do something, go fetch me a glass of water. I think to myself, do I want to or don't I? I have a way of finding out, deciding, is this something I want to do? Someone asks me to take a job. I make a decision, shall I or shan't I? In other words, whenever I've given an instruction, the point of decision occurs after the instruction has been given, and then I understand, or whenever a challenge faces me, the decision always happens at that point in time. And then I decide, based on the criteria of whatever I'm using to make my decision, whether I will or won't do it. At Har Sinai, the Jews flipped that order around. And they said, before we know what kind of instruction we're going to be given, before we have the decision and the conflict presented to us, we've already told you the decision we're going to make in the future. They said, don't tell us necessarily what we have to do yet. We'll find out. But we know we will do it. What does it mean? It means that at that point in time, the Jewish people reached a level of intimate connection to the Creator, prophetically, that they understood that they had to align themselves with the divine reality, the ultimate reality of the world. And once they'd done that, there was no longer another decision which needed to be made. It was only a way of implementing that initial concretization of connection. That's nice of Nishma. That's something which is supernatural. Because human beings function according to making a decision at the moment. To be able to govern yourself with an internal compass which is pre-decided, you already know where you're going, that's angelic. Now, what that means to us is that what the giving and the receiving of the Torah was an intimate alignment between the deepest part of who I am, which is my want, to that of Hashem. And receiving the Torah means the Torah is what you want from me, Hashem. And my receiving is what you want from me is also what I want from me. And the ultimate question we ask ourselves on Shavuos is not to relive the fanfare and the drama of that event, even though that's important. What we're trying to do is we're trying to ask ourselves possibly the deepest question we can about who we are in our lives. We're asking ourselves on Shavuos, not when was the Torah given, but what do I want for my life? And the receiving of the Torah is, what I want for my life is, Hashem, what you want for my life. And when we do that, that's a connection, and that's the ultimate revisiting and revival of the beginning of the Jewish people, which is as current and as present in today's world. So Shavuos is a day of celebration. It's celebrating my intimate connection on the deepest level of the direction of the way in which my life will lead me. Good Yom Tov.